After spending 15 years at Dalton and Brooks Financial, I had lost count of the countless early mornings and late nights I'd poured into this company. I'd dedicated myself fully, mentoring others, working overtime, fixing mistakes left by others, and staying loyal even when the budgets tightened. But sitting there on that chilly Friday morning in the sleek conference room surrounded by glass walls, none of it seemed to matter anymore. Across the table was Amanda Price, the newly appointed CEO, barely in her mid-30s, flanked by Richard, the always distant HR manager, and Kevin, my direct supervisor, whose smug smirk made my stomach turn. Amanda spoke in a calm, almost rehearsed tone. "Kathy, thank you for joining us. I'll get straight to the point. As part of a strategic shift, we're restructuring. Unfortunately, your role has been identified as redundant." Redundant! That word hit me like a slap in the face. I knew every inch of this company, from the legacy accounting systems to the quirks of our biggest clients. But I stayed composed, folding my hands neatly in my lap. I'd learned long ago that showing emotion in these meetings only put you at a disadvantage. Before I could even answer, Kevin leaned back with crossed arms. "We're just cleaning house, Kathy trimming the dead weight, if you will." Richard flinched but stayed silent. Amanda didn't even flinch from the corner. Emma, a younger analyst who had been with us only 2 years, murmured quietly, "Don't take it personally, Kathy. It's just business." Her voice was hesitant, almost apologetic, but the words still stung. I gave a polite smile, my heart pounding under my neatly pressed blazer. "No problem at all," I replied calmly, noticing the surprise flash in their eyes. They had expected resistance, maybe even tears. But what they didn't realize was that I'd been preparing for this moment for weeks. 3 weeks earlier, I accidentally saw an internal email chain I wasn't meant to. An after-hours thread carelessly forwarded to me outlining Amanda and Kevin's plan to modernize the company by cutting senior staff under the guise of restructuring, including me. Since then, I'd spent nights quietly and strategically preparing. Amanda slid a manila folder across the table. "Inside are your severance terms. We'll need your keycard, laptop, and phone by the end of today. Your team will be notified this afternoon." My team. 12 talented people I had personally hired and mentored. They were like family. Many still looked to me for professional and personal guidance. The thought of leaving them behind stung far more than losing my title. "I understand completely," I said, lifting the folder but not opening it. "Thank you for the opportunity." Amanda nodded, relief evident as she moved on to the next agenda item. Kevin's smug grin stretched wider, while Richard jotted notes mechanically in his HR notebook. Only Emma avoided my gaze, sensing something was off walking back to my office. I passed the main conference room where Amanda's chosen executives were already prepping for Monday's leadership retreat. Their laughter behind the glass walls felt hollow. I could almost hear Kevin boasting about finally getting rid of me. I shut and locked my office door behind me. Pulling out my personal phone, I sent a short, decisive text. "It's happening. End of day today." The reply came within seconds. "Perfect ready when you are dinner tonight?" I exhaled slowly, feeling the tension in my shoulders ease. Tonight, I would meet someone who had been waiting patiently for this moment, someone who valued what Amanda, Kevin, and the rest had overlooked. I glanced at the calendar on my desk. Friday, I'd be walking out of Dalton and Brooks today. But Monday? Monday was going to be something else entirely. And they had no clue I arrived at Leon, a low-key yet elegant restaurant on the other side of town, far enough from the corporate district to avoid prying eyes. The dim lighting, polished wood, and soft jazz pouring from the speakers made it the perfect spot for a private conversation. "Over here," a familiar voice called softly from a corner booth. I smiled as I slid into the seat opposite Jonathan Pierce, CEO of Silvercrest Capital, Dalton and Brooks's fiercest rival, and a man I'd quietly maintained a professional connection with for years. He stood slightly as I sat, ever the gentleman, then settled back and signaled the waiter. "So, they finally went through with it, huh?" Jonathan said, pouring me a glass of wine. "They did," I answered, "just like we thought." His eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Kevin's arrogance was always his downfall. And Amanda! I suspected she'd make this move the moment she stepped into Victor's shoes. Victor, the previous CEO, had recognized my contributions despite his flaws. His sudden retirement 6 months ago marked Amanda's rapid rise and the slow, calculated sidelining of senior staff I had held on for a while, but could see the writing on the wall. I didn't want to believe they'd actually do it, I admitted, swirling the wine in my glass. But after seeing that email chain, I knew it was over. Jonathan leaned in, lowering his voice. "Our legal team's already reviewed everything. You're solid, Kathy. Those improvements you made to the client portfolio system over the past year, the late nights working from home, we have clear proof you developed them on your own time, with your own equipment." The knot in my stomach loosened. "They underestimated me," I said quietly. "They always have," Jonathan chuckled. "They see age and assume complacency, but they have no idea you've been quietly building something far better than anything Amanda's team could dream up." I pulled a slim folder from my handbag and slid it across the table. Inside were copies of updated algorithms, efficiency reports, and a preliminary patent application, all under my name. Over the past year, I had refined Dalton and Brooks's crucial client management software off the clock. Working at home and on weekends, every enhancement was documented, time-stamped, and unquestionably mine. Jonathan scanned the papers, letting out a slow, impressed whistle. "You've outdone yourself with this. Silvercrest could outpace them within a quarter." I nodded. "That's only part of it. I also have the loyalty of my whole team. They've seen how Amanda and Kevin treated me, and they won't stick around long once I'm gone. They've already hinted they'd follow me anywhere." Jonathan leaned back, clearly impressed. "You're offering me not just the system, but the people who know it inside and out." I shrugged modestly. "They're good people. They deserve far better than what Dalton and Brooks has become." The waiter soon returned with our meals, but neither of us touched the food right away. There was too much writing on this conversation to be distracted. Jonathan cut straight to the chase, asking, "When can you start?" I took a deep breath and replied, "I'll take the weekend to regroup, but I'm ready, and so is my team." Jonathan's grin broadened. "Perfect Monday. We'll announce your appointment as Silvercrest's new Director of Strategic Innovation. We'll frame it carefully, but the message will be crystal clear." I could already picture Amanda's expression when she saw the news leaning forward. I added, "There's one more thing. I've already prepared a series of transition documents. Every procedure, password, and project outline I plan to leave them behind. It'll seem like a courtesy, but without me and my team, they'll soon realize just how much I held together." Jonathan raised an eyebrow. "Poetic." "Strategic," I corrected him. "I'm not seeking revenge. I want recognition. And I want my people protected." As we clinked glasses to seal the plan, a calm confidence washed over me. The wheels were in motion. Amanda, Kevin, and the others thought Friday marked the end of my story. They had no idea it was just the beginning. Monday morning felt different as I stepped into the office. Nothing had physically changed. The hum of printers, the clicking keyboards, the low murmur of conversations. But beneath it all, I sensed a quiet buzz of gossip. News of my departure had already spread. Passing coworkers gave me sympathetic smiles or quick glances before returning to their screens. Emma, the young analyst from Friday's meeting, lingered near the break room, as if wanting to speak but lacking courage. I nodded gently at her before heading to my office, where the box I'd begun packing on Friday sat waiting. Framed family photos, awards, and small mementos from years of conferences stared back. a reminder of how much time I'd invested here. What struck me most was the silence. None of the executives stopped by Kevin didn't even have the decency to check in for all their Friday bravado. They couldn't be bothered to see me off. I spent the morning carefully organizing every project I'd touched. Not because they deserved it, but because I knew what I was doing. Every file, process, and password was documented with painstaking detail, a gift wrapped in a bow that would still leave them lost without the context only my team. And I truly understood by noon. The awkwardness around the office peaked. One by one, my team stopped by my office under the pretense of dropping off files or asking procedural questions. But I knew better. They wanted to say goodbye, and more importantly, to know if there was more to the story. Miguel, my most trusted developer, gently closed the door behind him. Is it true? You're really leaving after everything? I smiled softly. Not exactly. He raised a brow, silently urging me to continue. Check your personal email tonight, I said, standing to shake his hand. Trust me. He hesitated, then nodded. We'll miss you, all of us. They'll try to keep things afloat, but without you. He trailed off, shaking his head. It won't be the same. I winked. That's their problem now. Later that afternoon, Richard from HR arrived, clipboard in hand, conducting my exit interview with the enthusiasm of someone eager to be anywhere else. He rattled off policies and slid a non-disclosure agreement toward me, like it was just another piece of paper. You understand that all work created during your employment remains the property of Dalton and Brooks, he recited flatly. I signed deliberately, emphasizing each word. Of course, anything I created during my time here with company resources belongs to Dalton and Brooks. I said it slowly, letting the implication hang in the air Richard barely noticed, too busy checking boxes. And you affirm you have no copies of proprietary information? He asked. I've taken nothing that belongs to the company, I replied honestly. With that, the formalities ended. I packed the last of my things and taped the box shut. Standing in the doorway one last time, I took in my office, the empty chair where teammates had sought advice, comfort, and guidance so many times before leaving so soon. Kevin's voice came from behind me. I turned to see him leaning casually against the doorframe, his tie loosened, smugness radiating off him. Well, he said, don't let the door hit you on the way out. You had a good run, Kathy, but this place needs fresh blood. No hard feelings. He shrugged like he was brushing off a waiter. I returned his smile politely, keeping my expression unreadable. No hard feelings at all. You'll probably enjoy retirement, Kevin added. Maybe take up gardening or something. I held his gaze. Oh, I'm not retiring, I said softly. I've already lined something up starts Monday. Kevin blinked, caught off guard. Oh? A leadership position, I added, stepping past him into the hallway. Something I'm genuinely excited about. He chuckled awkwardly, but I didn't wait to hear more. I walked out of the building, box in hand, leaving behind 15 years of memories, late nights, and most importantly, the people who had underestimated me. I wasn't just walking away from Dalton and Brooks. I was stepping into something far more rewarding. And Monday. Monday was going to be very interesting. I woke earlier than usual on Monday, with no rush and no commute to the office where I'd spent so much of my adult life. Instead, I stood at my bedroom window, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise cast a gentle glow over the city I'd always believed in hard work and loyalty. But that morning, I felt something I hadn't in years. Freedom. By 8 a.m., the news went live. Refreshing the Silvercrest Capital website, I saw it boldly displayed. Silvercrest Capital announces Kathy Bennett as Director of Strategic Innovation. Exclusive rights secured for revolutionary client portfolio system. It wasn't just a job title. It was a public declaration of ownership over the very system Dalton and Brooks depended on. The press release explained how I developed the updated system independently, outside company hours and resources, and detailed Silvercrest's plans to deploy the technology to leapfrog competitors. I knew Amanda, Kevin, and Richard were reading that same release right then. Moments later, my phone buzzed. 9:12 a.m. Emma. Kathy, what's going on? There's chaos here. I smiled quietly to myself. 9:17 a.m. Miguel. They just called an emergency executive meeting. Amanda looks like she's seen a ghost. I answered simply, check your personal email. Over the weekend, I had quietly sent private offers to my entire team. Every developer, analyst, and coordinator who'd stood by me, overlooked and undervalued for years, Silvercrest had prepared senior roles for them with better pay, improved benefits, and most importantly, genuine recognition. By 10 a.m., the news had spread like wildfire throughout the financial sector. Industry blogs were already dubbing it the Bennett coup. LinkedIn was buzzing with posts about the sudden upheaval. Clients of Dalton and Brooks were starting to panic, and so was the company itself. At 10:30, a familiar number flashed on my phone. Amanda keeping my voice steady, I answered, "Hello, Amanda." "Kathy," she said, voice tight but controlled. "There's been a misunderstanding. We need to discuss the intellectual property you took with you." I couldn't suppress a soft chuckle. "Amanda, I took nothing that belongs to Dalton and Brooks. What I developed on my own time, with my own resources, belongs to me. You'll find it clearly stated in the employment agreement, Section 14, if I remember correctly." Silence followed. "Let's be reasonable." She tried again. "We're open to negotiations. Can you come in this afternoon?" "Oh, Amanda," I said sweetly. "I'm booked solid this week, but I'm sure our legal teams will have plenty to discuss." I hung up before she could respond. At 10:45, Miguel texted, "It's pandemonium. Kevin's yelling at it to pull every server. Amanda's locked herself in her office. Half the team is asking if they should start job hunting." I replied tersely, "They won't have to look far." Before noon, nearly everyone from my old team had sent acceptance confirmations. Even Emma, who'd seemed hesitant before, wrote back, "If you'll have me, I'd be honored." Silvercrest's legal team was already handling licensing inquiries from Dalton and Brooks's biggest clients. They could either pay handsomely to license the system or try rebuilding it from scratch, a process that would take years and cost millions they couldn't afford to lose. By lunchtime, Dalton and Brooks's stock had dropped 6%. Investors hate uncertainty, and this was peak uncertainty. Meanwhile, Silvercrest shares were climbing as rumors of client migrations circulated. Then my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Kevin. "Kathy," he said, struggling to keep calm. "We need to talk. Maybe we rushed the decision. Maybe there's a role for you after all." I almost laughed. "Kevin, I'm flattered, truly, but I think you're about to be very busy." "You can't do this," he hissed. "You're burning bridges." "No," I said softly. "I'm just crossing one you didn't even see me build." I ended the call and leaned back. The emails from my old team kept pouring in. Everyone ready to jump ship. Kevin, Amanda, and Richard thought Friday was the final chapter, but it was only the beginning of a long, painful week for Dalton and Brooks, and the best was yet to come. By Tuesday morning, Dalton and Brooks's cracks were glaring, no longer hidden but gaping and obvious to anyone paying attention. Industry blogs dissected every detail analysts speculated on financial shows. Clients whispered privately about moving accounts to Silvercrest. I sat in Silvercrest's conference room, sunlight flooding the space, surrounded by my new colleagues. And more importantly, my old team, Miguel, Emma, and the others looked more energized than I'd seen them in years. "You really pulled it off," Miguel said. shaking his head as we prepared for our first project meeting. I still can't believe it. Believe it, I replied, and let's make sure it's worth it. Jonathan entered and nodded. The fallout's worse than we expected. 3 of Dalton and Brooks's largest clients have already reached out to negotiate. They're jumping ship. I nodded, unsurprised. Those clients relied heavily on the system I built. The fear of losing that stability pushed them towards Silvercrest, even if it meant breaking contracts. By mid-morning, a message from an old friend inside Dalton and Brooks lit up my phone. David. Emergency board meeting called. Kevin's pacing like a caged animal. Amanda's been silent since Monday. Richard looks like he's aged 10 years overnight. I forwarded it to Jonathan, who chuckled. I almost feel sorry for them. Almost, I replied. Later that day, Denise, a longtime senior client, arranged an unexpected lunch we'd worked together for over a decade, and I suspected it wasn't just a casual catch-up over coffee and salads in a quiet spot. She got straight to the point. We've relied on you more than you know. Amanda's team can't manage the portfolio system without you, and frankly, we don't trust them anymore. I reassured her. We'd love to keep working with you through Silvercrest. Denise relaxed visibly. I'll push it through on our end. Back at Silvercrest, Jonathan was waiting with fresh reports. More clients lining up. Dalton and Brooks is hemorrhaging. I stared at the list. Many were relationships I'd nurtured personally. It wasn't just business. It was about protecting the people I'd built those connections with, helping keep their businesses stable after Amanda and Kevin's mishandling around 3 p.m. Another message from David arrived. David. Rumor is Kevin's blaming Amanda, Amanda's blaming Richard, and the board's furious leadership shakeups are on the table, I replied. Expected by Wednesday morning, Dalton and Brooks's stock had plunged 15%, triggering shareholder panic. Several employees reached out privately, asking if Silvercrest was hiring beyond just my team. People were desperate to escape the sinking ship. The pivotal moment came at 11 a.m. when Dalton and Brooks's general counsel, accompanied by 2 senior executives, requested a formal meeting with Silvercrest's legal team. They're ready to talk, Jonathan told me. They know they're cornered. They want licensing, I said calmly, but they'll want it cheap and quiet. Oh, I'm sure of that, Jonathan grinned. They're not going to get what they expect. Our legal team had everything ready. A steep, non-negotiable licensing fee, backdated to cover all prior use, plus a public statement officially crediting me as the sole creator of the system. I knew this would bruise Amanda and Kevin's egos more than the financial blow, forcing them to admit openly that the dead weight they tried to cast off was actually the architect of their success. Later that evening, Miguel stopped by my office. Have you seen the headlines? He asked, handing me his phone. The breaking news blazed across the screen. Dalton and Brooks Board announces sudden executive shakeup. CEO Amanda Price and head of product Kevin Rhodes resign. Immediately, I breathed deeply, letting the moment settle in 15 years of dedication, discarded like nothing. And now, I'd reclaimed both my respect and my worth. How does that feel? Miguel asked. Like justice served, I said softly. As congratulatory emails from Silvercrest executives poured into my inbox and news outlets buzzed, I reflected on Kevin's words from that Friday. Dead weight. Far from it. And this was far from over. 2 weeks later, I stood in Silvercrest's main conference room, gazing out at the city skyline as final signatures sealed the deal. The licensing agreement was official. Dalton and Brooks had begrudgingly accepted the terms. They'd agree to pay full licensing fees, retroactive and future, and more importantly, publicly recognize me as the sole inventor of the client portfolio system that had driven their success for nearly 10 years. Jonathan walked in, grinning. It's official. Congratulations, Kathy. They've broadcast the acknowledgement everywhere, no more hiding. I exhaled, feeling the weight of those 15 years begin to lift. The public statement was brief but potent. Dalton and Brooks formally recognizes Kathy Bennett as the sole creator of the portfolio management system developed during her tenure and thanks her for her contributions to the industry. Grateful. The irony didn't escape me. Just weeks ago, I was cast aside like a burden. Now they were singing my praises loud and clear. Meanwhile, Silvercrest flourished clients who followed me and my team transitioned seamlessly. Our upgraded version of the system, enhanced with improvements I'd deliberately withheld after sensing Dalton and Brooks's betrayal, was outperforming every forecast Miguel and Emma knocked and entered. "You need to see this," Miguel said, holding up his tablet. The headline made me smirk. Dalton and Brooks faces. Investor revolt. After executive mismanagement, board under fire for patent oversight and talent. Exodus. The vultures are circling, Emma observed. They'll survive, I said, crossing my arms, but not without learning a painful lesson. As we joined the innovation team for our meeting, I reflected on how far I'd come. I thought about Amanda's cold dismissal, Kevin's smugness, and the board's silent complicity. They saw me as outdated and irrelevant, someone who'd overstayed her welcome. But the truth was, they never grasped the real value of experience, loyalty, and authentic innovation. After the meeting, I got an unexpected call from Denise at Dalton and Brooks's legal department, the same woman who once slid that severance package across the table. "Kathy," she began quietly, "on behalf of the remaining leadership, I want to apologize for how you were treated. Many of us disagreed with it." I heard the regret in her voice, but knew it wasn't just about kindness. It was survival. "Thank you for reaching out," I replied evenly, "but I've moved on. So has my team." Denise paused. "If there's ever a chance to collaborate again..." I cut her off. "I think Dalton and Brooks has rebuilding to do first." We ended the call politely, but the message was clear. They'd burned a bridge they wished hadn't been scorched. Later that evening, walking through Silvercrest's offices, I noticed how different it felt here. People actually listened when I spoke. My ideas weren't met with eye rolls or condescending smiles. My age wasn't seen as a liability, but as a testament to experience. My team thrived, energized and free from the toxic atmosphere we'd escaped. Passing the development wing, I spotted Emma confidently leading a small group, explaining complex concepts. Miguel stood beside her, nodding approvingly. Watching them flourish meant more to me than any title ever could. Jonathan found me near the windows later. "You've changed the game," he said. "Maybe," I replied, "but it shouldn't have taken this much for people to value what we bring." He nodded. "It's not just here. The whole industry's talking about you." I gazed out at the skyline. Good, maybe next time someone will think twice before dismissing the so-called dead weight. As the sun dipped low, casting a golden glow, I finally let myself feel it. Not vengeance, but satisfaction. Not just for me, but for every overlooked worker told they were too old, too quiet, or too set in their ways. I hadn't just proven Amanda and Kevin wrong. I'd reminded an entire industry that loyalty, skill, and integrity aren't weaknesses. They're strengths.